This is episode 2 of the DomTruthBeToldPodcast. In tonight's episode, we're going to talk about why have men decided to give up on today's women in society. Let me just start with this before I go into the topic. I was at the barbershop earlier today getting my hair cut, and I had a good conversation about where today's society is at when it comes to men and women and the unrealistic expectations that's being placed on both. And now, because of the platforms that TikTok and Facebook, that's been around forever, and Instagram as well, being able for people to use, they're able to express their opinions more. They're able to give their thoughts on situations more. But here's the thing about that: when it comes to talking about such topics, the person who's making that video, the person who's watching it for on the women's side, a man can say she's starting to have that same kind of mentality because of what she watched. That's not always true in a lot of cases, but in this main case, that's mainly is what we're starting to notice. That's mainly what we're starting to see. But I would also say that it's because when a woman says we don't qualify because we don't do enough as men, our nature is just to give up, especially when we don't have any ties to this woman. We don't have any kids by this woman. We're not indebted with this woman. We just give up. We move on. And as I said before, when you have a large portion of women who have this mentality of what they thinking and what they feeling, as men, we don't have to deal with that. So that's why we give up. That's why we move forward. We move on to the next thing, or the next woman who won't have that mentality, who will see things in an equal way. There can't be any egos. Naturally, as men and women, we have our egos because that's just a part of who we are. But when you're talking about being in a relationship with someone, you can't have egos. Y'all both have to want the same things. Y'all both have to align on the same things. Not to say that it's going to be perfect and rosy, because it's not. But at the same time, you're getting to know who that person is. So, in case the situation arises, you know how to talk to them. You know how to be able to attack the issue at hand without it being a big blow up, because you already know who you're dealing with. You already know who you're talking to. You already know who you're learning about. And what you know of that person, you know that person mentality. But now, in today's society, that has seemed to be lost. That seems to be forgotten. And that seems to not even matter. We're put in a category as men to be simps or to be pookies, as I said in my first episode. And we're the good guys, but a woman could say they want a guy, but not necessarily the good guy. They could want the street guy with the mentality of a good guy. I believe, as I said, no, you like the idea of a street guy. You don't really know what it's like to be with a street guy who's in the trenches, who's selling dope, who makes his living off of selling dope. You don't know what it's like to be in the car with the guy when he got crack inside his car that he's selling to the street, or he's selling to the block, or he's selling to the neighborhood. And you wind up with that in particular guy. But at the end of the day, that guy not going to value you as much. You are there to watch his product. You are there to make sure he good. But he don't necessarily need you to be around. He already doing everything on his own. But if this isn't the type of person in particular that women seem to always wind up with, it's because that's what you want. You like the idea of being with that instead of someone that's a nerd, or per se, someone that's a nice guy, per se, because then you get bored. Like I said, this isn't a perfect science. We all have our issues, both genders. But at the same time, you become more complicated. And guys don't want to deal with complicated women. Even though we know there are out there, because it's visible to us and we can see it all the time, we don't want to deal with that. We would rather make our money, have our peace, and not have to deal with stress, not have to deal with drama, not have to deal with hearing you out, not have to deal with you being combative with us. It's all right for women to have their own opinion, as I said in the barbershop. It's all right for women to even have their mentality of how they act, because that's probably the product of their environment that they was raised in. That's okay, but you have to understand that about a woman in order to deal with that from a woman. And if you as a man don't understand that from a woman, then you don't want to hear her yelling, screaming, or arguing with you, or when she's mean to you. You're going to be like, you're going to want to just push that to the side and not want to deal with that altogether. But if you're dealing with a woman with that kind of mentality, and you're dealing with a woman with that kind of outlook, then you can't, on the other hand, think that all of a sudden, I can change her, I can make her better. No, sometimes a woman is going to be stuck in her ways, and you got to let that woman be stuck in her ways. She will appreciate you more for not trying to change her and accepting her for who she is. As I said before, knowing who you with, because I got something to say on that. When men and women who's together know who they're with, that's how the bond is created. Why do you think the successful marriages work? Because yes, a lot of it is financial and it's a partnership, but they also know who they're with. They're also not dealing with something from an unrealistic perspective of who they're sleeping with. They know who the person is. They know how long they've been with them. They've been through the ups, they've been through the downs, they've been with them through the good days, they've been through them with the bad days. And at the end of the day, women's nature is to be nurturing. A woman's nature is to be able to take care of the man that they're dealing with. And there's multiple ways that they can do that. And the way that they decide to do that is what's going to tell you if she's really feeling you, or if she's doing this to get something out of you. And in today's society, like I said, this is the Dom Truth Be Told podcast. I'm telling you from the realistic standpoint, that is forgotten about. That don't seem to matter anymore. Because I always say there's a starting point from getting to know someone, to becoming friends with someone, to start dating with someone, to getting in a relationship with someone. These, 4 or 5 steps do not change just because the times have changed, just because we now have social media. No. The process is still the same. The process don't change just because we have different avenues to express our opinions and share our thoughts and have a microphone in our hands. The process don't change. You still have to be able to know who you're dealing with, getting to know who you're dealing with, being friends with them, dealing with them, going through the ups and downs with them, because it could get messy. And are you going to be with that person when it does get messy, when the person's not feeling well, when they're sick, when there's a death in the family? Are you going to be there for that person? Not just as a friend, but when the relationship turns into something more. How often are you going to be there for that person? How often is she going to be there for you when you're not having a good day, when you need some encouragement? How can she lift you up? And I'm talking about with words, not even actions, words. Because a woman, they can motivate. They could get you on your feet. They could want you to do better. They can give you that extra push and that extra edge that you need. And then on our end, we want to comfort her. We want to make sure she good. We want to make sure she all right. If there's anything we need, anything she needs, that's what's important. Before you even talk about money, meaning support matters more in realistic perspective than the money. Because the money is the ultimate dollar. That's going to be there based off if you guys have jobs. If you got a job and she got a job, or you got a career and she got a career. But supporting each other when it's messy, supporting each other when you down, that's what matters in relationships. Supporting each other when there's not a good day at work, or you had a bad day altogether. Those are the realistic perspectives that's just seem to be flying over everybody's head, or they're just choosing to ignore it. But since y'all want to make videos about topics that don't matter, how would you, as a woman, provide for a man? Make a video about that. And I want to see each woman from TikTok make a video about what they would do to provide for a man. And let's see how many women do a video on that. Because it's always in the negative aspect. Let's talk about the positive aspect. And then the same thing on our men's side. What's the positives with being with a woman? What can we provide to the woman outside of our money? How can we make a woman better? How can we get a woman on her feet? How can we elevate her? Modern men can do these things if you allow us to do these things. But if you already put us in the category that you already assume we in, you're already going to think you're ahead of us and we're below you. You're up here and we're down here. And then at that point, it's like, well, you know it all, shorty. Have at it as you will. And we move on. But if you can listen, get the time to understand who you're dealing with, understand who you're trying to talk to, and where can this go as time progresses and as we move forward, that's the true actions of a woman. That's the true actions of a woman that a guy will pursue, because you both have the same alignment. Y'all both got the same vision. That's what matters in today's society. Not this other stuff that's glamorized, like sex. I said to my barber today, why is it that every woman think that men just want sex? It depends on the kind of man that you're dealing with. But that ain't all of us. That goes back to labeling. You putting us in the category and then saying because of your experiences, it's making it sound like all men. No, you just haven't found the man who can value more than sex and outside of sex. So you want to wait. That's your prerogative to do that. But make sure that you're doing that for the man who actually care about who you are, not for the man that you really want, but he not going to wait for you. So you're going to feel threatened. Or are you going to feel ashamed? Or are you going to feel like, why you don't care about getting to know me more than sleeping with me? Because you're choosing to deal with a man who only cares about sleeping with you and not getting to know you. You're not that important to him. You need to be with someone who values you outside of your body. This is the truth. Women, you need to be with a man who values you more than just your body, more than just your lust. Intimacy is important, but intimacy isn't everything. Intimacy isn't everything to me. It's not everything to me. I understand it's glamorized because it's in photos, women who post really, really beautiful pictures, Megan Fox for entrance, Megan Good for entrance, Rihanna for entrance, Cardi B for entrance, you know, the twins, Chloe, and I forgot the other one. You know, these things that we're able to see, it glamorizes, you know, intimacy. It glamorizes, you know, seduction, you know. And the thing that you have to remember about that is more than likely you're never going to come across a woman who look as beautiful as those women do. And if you do, you know, you have to have some decorum, or you have to be able to have some discipline in order to not let that be the main thing. Discipline and decorum and understanding, yes, she's beautiful, yes, she has a good body, yes, she's all of these things, but do she care about who I am as a man? You know, do she care about my thoughts? Does she care about my opinions? Does she care about my feelings? Or on the other side, do I care about her thoughts? Do I care about her feelings? Or do I only care about sleeping with her because she looked good in that picture? We can't get lost. We have to understand what's important and what matters. And if it's really meant to be in that aspect, you're going to get to the intimacy portion. But there's always the first, the second, and the third things that you have to do first before. The nice guys, we have to do more than the bad guys who have to do less. Because the bad guys just want what they want to get from out of them, and then they usually get it. Because women love bad guys. They love the dope boys. They love the dudes in the trap house. They love the dudes that's on the street. They love those things. That's what they like. That's what they see. That's what their environment entails. But if you want the person who isn't doing any of those things, regular modern dude, modern men as we put together now, as that's the trendy word to say, then you're going to get a different person. And you're going to get a person that values you and understands waiting before we have the intimacy portion of our relationship. If it gets that far. These are the things that's being forgotten about. These are the things that's flying over people's heads like a rocket. And we need to get back to understanding the points that matter. And I'm not saying it's going to be for everybody, because like I said in episode 1 in the Dom Truth Be Told podcast, the reality is most people are fine with just being single. And you have to let them deal with that. You got to let them accept that. But then on the other end, if you're going to be fine with that and accepting of that, then we don't want to hear complaining about you being single and why you're lonely. You chose to be that way. So you're only going to put out to the world what you put in. So if you project that energy after saying this is what you find and comfortable in, we don't want to see the complaining and hearing you complain about the same thing that you said you was comfortable in. That just don't make sense. And at the end of the day, if someone sees that and they notice that, they like, man, you don't really mean what you say. You're just doing what's popular and what's trendy and what the internet tells you, what social media tells you, instead of understanding what matters to you, what's important to you, and being fine and comfortable with it, and comfortable within that. We need to get back to understanding that part of it. And when we could get back to understanding that part of it, then we can finally have some real conversations and some real discussions. This stuff that I see is mind-boggling to me. But then I also have to remember, this is stuff that's trendy. This is stuff that's popular. But in Dom's world, in the Dom Truth Be Told podcast, it's not reality. That's not how it is for everyday men. That's not how it is in our lives. And if you're going to put us in the category and say we are these things, why do we think we're supposed to bow down to you and crawl at our feet for you? Just like you said, you don't need us, we don't need you. And until you come out of that mentality, this is how it's going to be. Complaining, regurgitating the same things, and not making any progress. I'm about getting down to the facts. I'm about getting down to the truth and finding solutions. This is the Dom Truth Be Told podcast. Like and subscribe. I got more on the way, man. God bless.